I want to come back to your YouTube series because it really does give you an idea of your process and the work that was involved in the project in the Eastern Cape, and then also some of the writing.
Yeah.
And what I loved about it was that you went back to your childhood, and I wanted to just share an image that you include in the video and ask you what it sort of stirs up in you about your memories of being a youngster in Johannesburg in late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, I think this was my 4th birthday party. It was a cake in the shape of a boat, I remember. I guess what this image makes me think is, what a privileged child I had as a white South African, and how far removed this was from the sufferings of so many people in our country.
Yeah.
Of course, my family had sufferings too. My sister Kay committed suicide. We were quite harassed by the special branch. Every human family is interesting and valuable. But I think that although apartheid is not the fault of anyone in my generation, and we don't bear guilt as such, we didn't cause it, that doesn't mean that you don't have responsibility. And I think that South Africans of all colours and of many different levels in society, we all have things that we can give to others. And actually the only way that the country is going to heal is if individuals say, who do I know whose child needs a textbook? Maybe I can pay for that. Could I educate someone? Can I pay for someone's shack to be waterproof? That all of us know people who have less than we have. And if you just wait for the state to fix it, we're going to be waiting a very long time.
Oh.
And so, one of the amazing things about doing the Luto was I got thrown right into Xhosa village life, right into all these issues of who owns land, how can we get tenure on tribal land. Parts of the Natives Land Act are still on the statute books to this day. I mean, shockingly. But then, if you're generous, you're rewarded in very strange ways. And I feel it only happens if you don't look for the reward. It just comes in strange ways. And I felt, if I go and do this, I will somehow have the experience I need to write this book. And one night, I was in our little kitchen hut. So I recruited French, German, Americans, Xhosa, Zulus, white South Africans. We all went and set up camp on this hillside. And a young man called Khabisa Zono, and you can see this on YouTube. If you search Who Killed Pete Burrell on YouTube, you can actually meet him. He'd volunteered to be our assistant chef. And he came up to me in our little wooden Wendy hut kitchen one night, and he told me quite shyly that he'd written his own first novel in isiXhosa at the age of 21. And I did that in English.
The parallels.
With the drowning people when I was 21.
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, if I'd advertised for a research partner, I'd never have found this person who's had such a similar experience. It's quite an unusual thing to write a book when you're 21. And although Khabisa and I are very different, he grew up in the rural areas, I was born in the city, he's black, I'm white, our languages are different, our experiences are very different, but we are both storytellers. I think you're going to be hearing a lot about Khabisa Zono in the future of South African literature. And so what happened, which was amazing, was it was my story, and I tell it to him, but he would tell me what a Xhosa might be thinking, or give me details of the Xhosa worldview, and help me bring the Xhosa characters to life.
That is something that comes up in terms of some of the reviews you've had, and I have to say, look, your work generally seems to get pretty good reviews, except for that one snarky guy who now does decor reviewing or writes for an interiors magazine.
Not everyone does what I do, but I think it would be boring if they did.
Yeah, and this one's been getting a lot of good feedback, or you've compiled the good feedback, which is what one should do when doing tours. And something that comes up is the perspective of your different characters, and that the care you've taken in seeing things or kind of positing the reader in the worldview of different people. And that is something that comes up in writing, that literature can accommodate different worldviews in a way that sometimes in real life is very difficult.
Yeah.
But it does also raise a question around 3 of the main characters and the kind of racial tensions between them. And I wondered how you negotiated that, because as much as storytelling can, kind of bring people together, people who have very different backgrounds, one who's gotten an advance for a novel at Oxford at 18 and another growing up in rural Eastern Cape. But there are also those very delicate and difficult moments between different people.
Yeah.
So how did you bring that into the novel between your characters?
Well, I think that South Africa is a fascinating canvas for the storyteller, precisely because in any room there are so many different ways of viewing the world. And then seen in this novel, as I said, is the grandson of a witch doctor raised in the old ways, that Xhosa's gods and goddesses and dream symbolism and belief in one's ancestors guiding you. And interestingly, Khabisa had a dream a year before we arrived, and his ancestors told him that some white people would appear on the hill and he should join us.
Oh my
He only
gosh.
told me that years later. I know. I can't describe it. I can just tell you it happened. I can't explain it. And then, Luvo, of course, brought up by Christians, a very devout Christian, in some ways with a very European education. And then Pete, he doesn't really believe in God, but he has a sense of things unseen. And they all interpret what happens. It is tough building bridges across these divides. I mean, I was very conscious when I was having these meetings in the Eastern Cape saying, we want a long lease on tribal land. People had been told very interesting stories by white guys for the last 300 years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kind of built-in suspicion, totally understandably.
With good reason,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then in a
Yeah.
sense also I think that, I just have access to vast amounts of money, which is not true. I mean, it's true that I can borrow money in a way that no one in Ntwaku probably can.
Yeah.
But I'm not infinitely rich. And so there are these very strange dynamics, and some sad things happened. I tried to write the book in 2012 and I just couldn't yet create the black characters. I don't think I'd lived enough myself, and many things had to happen. Great friendships formed, some betrayals. Sometimes the temptation, once you've got a friend who can pay for a lot of things, that changes the dynamic of the relationship. Of course it does. And complicated human things unfolded from this that were very tough. And finally, one day I thought, okay, enough has now happened in my life that I can write across a village with a lot of warmth, but no sentimentality.
Yes.
And I had to get to that
stage. That's very important.
It's very important because we're all human beings, and you can't romanticize people. You shouldn't.